All right, welcome back, my friends. I'm here again with Fernando, and we're going to continue our series on the Yavanajataka, India's oldest astrological text on horoscopy. And I believe this is episode 6. And we're going to be talking about chapters 39 through 43 in this series. And we get some pretty esoteric stuff in these chapters. It's pretty interesting. And we also get some more concrete information on Dashas, although as we're going to see, it's a little shoddy with at least with what we have of the text currently, because I believe we're missing some of the text or some of the chapters and things. So I'm going to share my screen so we can see what we're doing here. Get rid of this. Okay, so chapter 39. Cool. So yeah, thanks for joining me once again, Fernando.
Thank you, Lars. Happy to be here to continue this analysis.
Alrighty, so chapter 39, we sort of get some more information on Dashas. And
I think it's the first time we're discussing Dashas in Yavanajataka, right? We haven't discussed this, have we?
There was a brief chapter that seemed to mention perfections. Remember?
Oh, yeah, remember, yeah. But Dashas in the sense of the Vedic term, right?
Yeah, possibly. It possibly is.
For those who don't know, dashas are basically planetary periods, and there are a couple of them in Jyotish, and we're going to be talking about that now.
Yeah. Okay, so, gosh, yeah, this chapter was like really kind of incomplete, if I remember.
The thing is that what we have here is basically the Spujismeister,
Spujismeister, yeah. Yeah.
He's just saying to us that, which makes sense, and it's traditional Jyotish, that there are planetary periods, of course. There are sub-periods that we're going to be discussing later on. And what he gives is like the natural sequence of the dashas according to planetary ages, okay? And then he talks about the dasha system, right? However, he does not mention specific systems of dashas. He just says that you have to combine the natural ages of the dashas, the natural dashas of the ages, with the specific system of dashas. But what's wrong here? He does not mention what specific system of dashas. As many of our viewers might know, there are different types of dashas.
Right.
The most famous being Bimshottari, but there's also Ashottari. There's also Kalachakra. I mean, there is also sign-based planetary periods. And obviously, you can combine those with the Hellenistic ones, which are perfections. And zodiacal releasing, which the Greek term is, once again...
aphesis?
Aphesia, exactly.
Aphesis,
so, this is very interesting because this scheme of the natural ages, which is the first one he gives, which I think is the 3, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So the natural age dasha, which we also find in Parashara, right?
Yeah. And I have it right here in Parashara, but if you want to do number 3 there, if you want to shade it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll do 3 and 4 because it's interesting because he doesn't, in Yavanajataka, he doesn't give the actual like years, but he gives like generalities in verse 4, which we'll go over. So Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Sun, and Saturn just kind of ruled the time periods of
the natural time periods.
Yeah.
Which is called Nisargaju in Parashara.
Okay. That's the Sanskrit. Cool.
So it's basically verbatim. Like Parashara also mentions this in chapter 43, shloka 16, 17, which are Nisargaju. Okay. And it says, O Brahmin, now I tell you about Nisargaju. 1, 2, 9, 20, 18, 20, and 50 are the years allotted to the moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Sun, Saturn from the period of birth. So we see that this thing that started in Yavanajataka supposedly, carry on to Brihaparashara. But what happens here? As I mentioned before, he says to combine them with the. I think it says it. Does he say? I think he says it in 1 and 2. So if we want to go there first, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. He might. It's kind of a little philosophical here.
So it says, Such is the rule relating to the life of people, regulated by the special rules regarding the periods, daja, or that would be, I mean, like bhuktis maybe, or like periods. Whatever is the number of the years determined as being the period, daya, of any planet, they call that its dasha. But also each planet obtained as its own age, bias, an equal amount of time in the course of lives embodied begins. Of embodied beings, I'm sorry, and by means of their own qualities and the influences of their period, Zaya, they produce increase or decrease of men. So he's saying here that you have to mix the special planetary period system with the regular planetary ages, right? And then he says that when a planet in the system combines with the natural age of the dasha, then you have a good dasha, or at least, you know, the one factor for a positive dasha. What happens here? So as I mentioned before, he does not mention the system of dasha. If I'm not incorrect, there was a time where people would argue between the Ashotari and the Vinshotari and say which one was the most prevalent in Kali Yuga. And today we use Vinshotari, which to most laymen in Jyotish, they think it's the only system, but there are a lot of systems of dashas. I believe my teacher once told me there were over 40.
Yeah, there's definitely over 40, and there's probably more actually, because
if you combine them with Hellenistic principles, there are more. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that what most people don't realize is, like, I mean, okay, Vimshotri Dasha is one of those that's a little esoteric. Like, we still don't really understand what the origin of the order is and what the origin of the years is. I mean, some people have proposed theories.
Let me tell you, Andrew Foss gave a very good explanation like a year ago in a book.
Did he?
Yeah. He gave a very good explanation in a book of mantras he took out. And it's probably like the only one I really seem to have understood. But yeah, nobody really knows where these...
I'd like to see that, yeah.
Yeah, nobody, and if you really think about it, nobody really knows why Vinshotari Dasha years are like that, like why the moon is 10, why Rahu is 18, why Jupiter is 16, that sort of thing.
Yeah. The problem, and the problem is like, okay, like the thing is in the Hellenistic tradition, there's years of the planets, but there's a very logical astronomical reason. Like, it's just basically hardcore astronomy when you get down to it.
Are you referring to zodiacal releasing, right?
Oh, yeah. The years of the planets are based on synodic cycles.
Yes, correct.
So they're very astronomically sound, which is nice for us who, you know, want to see the logic in this. But what I was going to say is that as long as there's some kind of consistent and coherent logic to something, right, then it will work. And so, you know, actually a lot of these Time Lord systems were probably created by astrologers. They weren't like divinely revealed by Lord Brahma or something like that. They were just created by practitioners of astrology who were wise enough to say, like, oh, you know what? I bet you if I do this, it'll work really well because it makes sense. And then it did. And that's it.
And not only that, I sometimes believe that when you study these things and you see pseudo-epigrapha, like the idea that Petrosiris or Hermes Trismegisto or Abraham wrote this, or that, you know, I was inspired by divine inspiration to say this. I think it's more or less the same dynamics that we see today with modern astrologers, like YouTube astrologers. I just invented a system and it's wonderful. It's the newest. It's very technical. Or the idea that, you know, I discovered something new. I think it's more or less the same. Let's say.
Well, a good example.
No, but let me finish. It's more or less the same literary resource that people use today to sell something, right? To make something more important than it is. To, you know, because men like myth, men like stories, men like drama, and that's what moves things in the world, right? And that's the difference between a great myth and a story that just dies out because it's not interesting. So
that's a good point. Yeah,
I think it's just a part of how humanity is, and yeah, just like you said, we really don't know where these years came from. We really don't know either where Mula Trikona degrees come from.
I personally just totally ignore that
Yeah,
myself.
and some people don't even know where the degrees of the exaltation and debilitation degrees come from. Some people say it's like the degrees that some planets were when there was the building of a temple for the god Nabu. It Nabu,
Oh,
which
I don't know. Jeez.
described God in Babylonia.
Okay.
So I
I
mean,
I pretty much ignore that too, to be honest. I'm not really impressed by the whole
the
logic
degrees.
of degrees.
Yeah.
Exaltations have by sign, if according to the tropical series, actually have a wonderful rationale. And for those interested, I have an essay on my website, on my blog, that goes into the whole structure of the tropical zodiac, where I talk about that. But yeah, degrees, just I've never. And same with Mula Trikona stuff. Like I'm willing to accept the idea of Mula Trikona to a certain degree, but some people say the moon is only exalted if it's between 0 and 3 degrees
Yeah.
Taurus, and I say that that's bullshit.
You say it's from 1 to 30?
Pretty much, I'd say
Well,
if it's
Mula
conjoined
Trikona is the
algal,
second best position. So I mean, it's not that different. Like
yeah. If it's conjoined algal, though, it doesn't matter what dignity it
for
has.
now, because in a few thousand years, it's not going to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But
but
I just don't. No, I just see the moon as exalted or fallen in Taurus, Scorpio. I just don't do anyway. That's whatever. I don't
those
know.
are technicalities.
Yeah,
But what I wanted to mention here, Lars, is some important points that we see in this initial chapter for this video.
yeah,
One is that he says something that most astrologers don't do, which is combine the natural ages of the planet with the dashas that are going on.
yeah. That is unique,
And
definitely.
another thing, he's not mentioning the system of the dasha scheme that we are supposed to mix with the natural ages. He's not mentioning any type of degrees or anything about that.
No,
And
no.
most importantly, which is a recurring theme in Yavanajataka, the nodes are nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, no nodes.
And of course, you don't have those in Brihat Parashara Horashastra in terms of the natural
Natural
ages.
age. Yeah.
But we're going to see afterwards in different dashas. And the dashas, we don't know if he's talking about the natural dashas or if he's talking about specific system dashas. But,
Yeah.
the nodes are nowhere to be seen, which is
Right. Once again.
I just
Yeah.
want- Oh, continue. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to turn to number 4 here, right? He gives us a vague description of the ages, right? The moon for when one is drinking one's mother's milk, and I think Parashara gives like 0 to 3 or
Yes.
0 to 2, something
He
like
actually says 1.
that. Okay. So, and then Mars is one of growing teeth, so that's right after.
He's saying 2.
Okay, so Mars starts at 2 and then goes till whatever. They say Mercury is the time of learning one's lesson.
9. He says 9.
Yeah, so I mean, I think whatever is in Parashara there is very logical and works very
But
well.
the thing is that in Parashara, after Mercury, he mentions Venus, but it says 20. And then he goes back to Jupiter and says 18. And then he goes to the Sun and says 20. And then for Saturn, he says 50. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, that's weird. Huh.
That's weird. I just wanted to mention that Ernst Wilhelm in his book Graha Sutras cites both shlokas, the one in Parashara and the one here. And he kind of gives another scheme that he figured out that I just want to share. He says that Moon is from 0 to 1 year. Mars is from 1 to 3 years. Mercury is from 3 to 12. Venus is from 12 to 32. Jupiter is from 32 to 50. Sun is from 50 to 70. And Saturn is from 70 to 120, which is the limit of the Vimshottari, the Dashas.
Yeah, and that was supposedly supposed to be the average lifespan of humanity.
And not only that, you see the records for the oldest people alive in recorded history, and they never pass from 120, 122.
But have some people lived to be 120? They have, right?
Yeah, they have. I mean, the oldest people don't pass from 120, 120. I think the oldest woman was a French woman who actually met Van Gogh, and because her father had a store to sell paintings, and she lived to 122.
Wow.
There are a couple of other people who've lived to 120, 121.
Well, and then there's the legends of the yogis who live for
of
hundreds of years.
course.
But that's beyond the natural.
The problem with those things are that we don't have concrete evidence. And,
yeah, of course.
But the probability, I mean, in biblical times, people used to live till 300 something like that, right?
Yeah.
Noah was like, which is possible. I mean, the thing is that I believe in those things, but
I do too. Yeah,
we don't have. We've decayed. We've.
Man, we should make a video. We should make a video about this sometime because it'd be really interesting. Like, there's so much I want to say, but if I say it, we'll never get through this.
Well, try to say it in a few words.
Well, it just has to do with. Oh God, there's so much.
Well,
but
in biblical times, they call it the fall, right? The fall.
Yeah, but it has to do with a lot of it today has to do with what we've accepted as a culture. Like we accept that the average lifespan is 75 or whatever, 70, right? But that's a mental construct.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Anyway, you're right. I mean, you're right.
But I wanted to say that this natural age Dasha, I've always found it fascinating because it's very similar to Ptolemy's technique called the Ages of Man, which is a very good Time Lord technique that I enjoy using, but I oftentimes forget to use it. But you are supposed to use it in contrast and in conjunction with other Time Lords that are more specific. But it's the same idea that it's a different order and stuff, but it's like everybody from 0 to like 4 is ruled by their moon. Everybody from like 4 to I think 12 or something is Mercury. Everybody from 12 to like 22 is Venus. And then it goes in the Chaldean order of the planets, which is based on planetary speed. Yeah.
And it's related to what Sfudishvaya is saying here.
But this is a uniquely Indian contribution, obviously. Like, it's not the Ages of Man. It's the same idea, but it's different. It's a completely different order.
Yes. It is.
So
it's similar, but it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's uniquely Indian, and it's kind of a mystery where these two systems come from. Because even Ptolemy's system, it's like, where the hell is this coming from? I mean,
probably there's a logical explanation to all these factors.
Yeah, probably.
We just lost them.
We just suck, so we just don't know.
Yeah, we just suck. Yeah, try to do astrology without a computer. We suck really bad.
Yeah, seriously. Okay.
We are retarded. Okay.
So number 6 is really interesting. Whichever of the moon, the sun, and the ascendant has superior strength, its dasha is seen first, and the rest follow after in the order of their strengths. This is exactly what a lot of Hellenistic astrologers tell us to do, especially regarding most of their Time Lord techniques, but especially like circumambulations, which I mentioned before. It's the idea that you're finding something called the Apheta, which has to do with like sun, moon, and ascendant, which one has like the control and which one has to do with like the life and vitality of the person. And then you're using that as like the primary dasha, so to speak, or the primary thing to start your Time Lord from. And so later on in like the Middle Ages, and I think it happened too in India, they just started saying, no, you just always start from the ascendant for this one, or you always start from the moon. Like Vimshotri Dasha, you're actually supposed to choose which is stronger of like the moon or the ascendant, according to some authors. Yeah. But most of us, and actually Ryan had a short video where he talked about this, so you might want to ask him about that at some point. But yeah, it's like, it's the same idea. It's like, oh, if the moon's really afflicted, you would start maybe from the ascendant. And, but we've kind of lost that over the ages. We've sort of gotten lazy. Like it doesn't matter. Just take the moon or just take the ascendant. But I've been experimenting with an obscure Time Lord, and I've been experimenting with like what happens if I really do pay attention to this idea of which one's the strongest and start from there. There seems to be something to it so far in my limited research. Yeah, so I think that's fascinating that we find that there. That's straight out of the Hellenistic playbook.
How would you figure out which was the most strong in terms of
there are a lot of rules. So like
for the ascendant, for example, that's what I understand.
Okay, well,
the sun and the moon, I mean, there's dignity there's a lot
basically you take You start with the sun or the moon, and if those are both afflicted in a certain way.
Oh, yeah, but I mean the ascendant.
Right. Then you move to the ascendant, and then basically it developed differently. Like some people say, if one of the ascendant's lords is making a close aspect to it, then it's viable. Other people might just say, take the ruler or the bound ruler and see if they're in good condition. Other people might just say, no, just go straight to the ascendant. It doesn't, if the sun and moon are not viable, just go straight to the ascendant.
Since this is natal astrology, I guess, I understand this, but since it's natal astrology, I think the ascendant is of utter importance.
Oh, it is. It's just that, like, where do you begin the dasha from, right? Like, do you be like, yeah, which one do you begin it from? Which
and
one's
once again, he's not mentioning what system to use.
No, he's not.
He's not. I mean, he's not using it. I mean, I don't know if this is intentional, or if maybe he's just referring to the ages of the planet, or maybe something got lost in translation. I don't know.
Yeah, well, probably a bit of both. Let's see. Oh, and then this is interesting, right? Whatever planet is ruler of the age or rises first, that is said to be lord of the dasha first.
I didn't understand that.
I don't either, but let's continue real quick. If a planet is superior in strength and is in an angle, it is designated first among the remaining dashas. So it seems to be this idea that you take, okay, somehow you find this first planet. Maybe it's the one that rises over the horizon first. And then you take the next in the bhuktis, what we'd call the bhuktis or the antardashas, right? You would take the planets in the angles, maybe followed by the ones in the succeedance and then the cadence. I've never heard of this. This is really interesting, and it could work really well. I could see it working really well. But I also think that, because we don't really know what he's talking about totally, it would be a challenge to put this together, and to really test it.
Yeah.
Number 8, the best dasha for a planet is one which occurs during its own age, which is the combination thing that you were talking about. That's what I mentioned, right? Yeah. So if Jupiter dasha occurs,
that's happening right now with me. Actually, I'm in Jupiter.
Nice.
So really? Okay. I hope I'm meeting a lot of gurus. I'm getting fat. I'm getting a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, maybe as it goes on, because you would have just entered that naturally.
Yeah, a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Right. Maybe there will be. Well, you could find the apex of it. You could see when the Lord of Jupiter is getting activated by Antardasha. That would probably do it for you because of.
It already happened. So it's.
Oh, okay. Huh. Well, I don't know then.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I just have Mars. I have just left Moon.
Okay.
I have Moon, Mars, and Rahu.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't really know. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. It's Fudishvaya is a sly Yotishi.
Yeah, and then these last two just talk about, if it's in a good place, it's good. If it's in a bad place,
which makes sense.
Pretty straightforward. Let's go to chapter 40. This is just what happens in the Dashas.
These are very good descriptions.
These are wonderful.
I mean, absolutely. and I'm going to be honest. I never read these, and I really like them. They remind me of the Rashi meanings, and I really like these ones.
Yeah, and I think
they all make sense. I mean, they all relate to the planetary significations. So I mean, they are very wonderful, and I'm actually going to use them in my videos when I talk about that.
Oh yeah, they're great. They're some of the best I've encountered, and actually they're also good for just generally observing. Like if you find one of these planets being strong, like like Jupiter. For me, for example,
you have it in Cancer, so it will
Jupiter is like really quite strong for me. Where the heck is it?
I think it's at the next page.
Okay. And when I was reading this, I was just like blown away by some of the things it said, because like I'm not in Jupiter Dasha. I already had that. And some of these things happened. I don't know.
Are you measuring your dashas with the traditional sidereal system, or are you measuring with the galactic center with equatorial coordinates?
More, I used to do it through Ardra galactic plane, which is close to
which is the Ernst system. Okay.
I did do the other Ernst system, the one you mentioned, like Middle Amula. That's like, it's like 19 degrees different.
Yeah.
And that one was okay for me. They all kind of work. I don't know.
Yeah. No, and not only that, I also think that the dashas with Chitrapaksha, traditional sidereal, they kind of overlap with the other ones.
Yeah, Chitrapaksha, I kind of like that one now. It's just really, I don't know. I think maybe because it's like there's something to be said for when the majority of practitioners like believe that works.
It changes it.
It changes it and makes it work better.
And that's the secret.
Yeah, the secret. Yeah, by so and so. I don't know who published that book.
No. I mean that's the secret. TM copyright. I mean, this is like the secret.
Oh, okay.
We create. We don't create it 100%, but
well, there's one mind. There's one mind.
Exactly.
This is why the tropical zodiac still works for people in the southern hemisphere, actually, but not going to get into that now.
And as a collective, as a person, we have the ability to create our reality to a certain extent, right?
Oh,
you're not going to fly. You're not going to be invisible. You're not going to be, Superman.
Well, maybe if you're Aleister Crowley.
Yeah. And then you have assistance from other people from other planes. But the thing is that your mind creates a lot of the reality that surrounds you. I mean, you're not going to break the rules of reality, but I mean,
you can if you're a high mucky muck.
Yeah, but if you are to that degree, the least thing you want to do is be a superhero. You just want to leave the plane of existence and fuse with the transcendent eternity. Yeah, but we're just diverting. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so. But I loved this description because my Jupiter is very powerful for a number of reasons in my chart. And so I was like, there was one thing where it was like, yeah, this was great. He obtains misery from his bewilderment on considering the methods of confirming ideas of subtle meaning. And like, I took this to mean both like trying to figure out, like the meanings of really esoteric things, but also in that when I observe people saying stupid things, especially on the internet, but also in person, I overtax myself, like trying to understand why they're so stupid. So like, I laughed when I saw this because I was
like Black Lives Matter, the patriarchy, things like that, right?
Man, you're just like a troll, aren't you?
No, I mean that's the things you've talked to me about in private. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, no, I'm messing with you. Yeah, like no, just a lot. Yeah, there's just a lot of political things like racist, xenophobic ideologies,
like Black Lives Matter. Yeah, and
more like the far right and like neo Nazis and things like that.
Yeah.
And and Jordan Peterson. Anyway, so I just thought that was funny, but yeah, these are great. I can't say all of these things happened to me in the Dasha of Jupiter, but I was very like during my Jupiter Dasha, I was very successful as a guitar player. I was getting a degree in guitar.
Did you make money?
Not really, because I was in school,
because I don't think Jupiter is a lot about money, and people just talk about that. I think Jupiter is more about abundance than anything else.
Yeah, Jupiter. Like, I mean, it was such an expansive time. I felt like really supported by like all my friends, family, and teachers. I got like a really, really valuable guitar, like really cheap, and I didn't have to wait a whole year to get it like you normally do when you purchase a custom-made guitar.
Oh, custom-made. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
handmade.
They measure.
No. But a handmade classical guitar is very expensive, and I got it.
Oh yeah, that's right. But usually with classic Spanish type guitars, right? or you're talking about an acoustic guitar, right?
Yeah, there's a standard neck length and width.
Oh, here in Latin America they do those, and in Spain, and they measure your hand.
Oh wow, that's freaking cool. I never heard of that.
And they're very expensive and very beautiful.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah. Well, that's even another level. You can go crazy with building instruments for yourself and making it super custom.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, no, a lot of great things happened for me. I had many gurus. I had in the sense that at school I had many teachers that I had a close connection with, and I studied with like 3 guitar teachers every semester I was there.
Wow.
And I even had one guitar teacher who's like, his name's Jeff Coleman, and I just went out to a club where he was playing and asked him to give me lessons, and then he called me back to give me lessons. And it was like this crazy thing because he didn't normally give lessons. And this is a guy with like an international career. Like he plays in a band with Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He goes to Japan a lot. He like, he's...
Chad Smith is the guitarist that almost died?
No, Chad Smith is the drummer from the Red Hot Chili
Peppers. Oh, the drummer, the one that looks like Will Ferrell. Okay.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah. And so my former guitar teacher, he actually had a band where he was with Chad Smith in it. And it's not like he was just part of the band. Like he was one of the main writers of the music. So, it's like, it just goes to shows that like, some of these things, yes, did come true for me. I had these like great teachers. I had like this great situation of doing music and, being in a supported environment. And so, but I can't say that literally, like, it's never going to be literal, of course. These are kind of metaphors, but yeah, I did get a lot of umbrellas at the time. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't. But
I'm going through Jupiter right now, and I've gotten a lot of umbrellas. Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, because I used to work in restaurants. And people leave their umbrellas every time in restaurants, and I'm not desperate, really. I'm not kidding. I've gotten in the last years probably like 4 or 5 umbrellas, and I've lost them all. The only ones I've kept are the ones I bought, which is really interesting.
Wow, that is hilarious. Like I love synchronistic moments like that. Like I saw that and I thought it was funny, and then it happened to pertain to your actual life. Yeah. So wonderful stuff. But I mean, I'd say like in a lot of ways, like, you're doing a lot of this stuff in 24.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Right. Sorry, it just...
What's going on there? No porn sites. Okay.
Yeah, trying to hide my
that hentai addiction you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. People almost saw that. People almost saw that I was trying to apply for some like writing gigs online.
My girlfriend loves hentai. Okay, continue.
Okay, so yeah, he enjoys his own dharma, which is perfect for it.
Not the type about the octopus. That's not the good type. The good type is the schoolgirl type. Okay,
let's getting pretty out there, man. But yeah, he enjoys his own dharma, which is perfect for that time. I think that that really applies to you. You're really.
I'm meeting a lot of people, and that's really really
great, good men. I think I think that applies to me, but pretty much no one else you're working with. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's not read the Saturn one because that's gonna apply to me.
Well. But actually, I'm in Saturn.
That's why I'm saying, because you're there. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is I was thinking about a friend of mine who, by this obscure Time Lord that I'm testing out, they were in Saturn for like a good 30 years, and they had a lot of...
Saturn gets no respect, man.
It doesn't, but they were getting a lot of career success and stuff. And if we look here, like it starts out pretty negative.
Read the first one. It says exhausting, fatigue, calamities, confusion, lazy, envious, deformed. It's like, man.
But man, that's been stuff I've struggled with. But then like thinking about my friend, like honored and put in charge of cities. Well, this person became an associate dean at the music school during the Saturn period they were in. And then, inherits position, distinction. Sure, absolutely. They didn't get profit by killing people or hired killings. They did not do that.
That could also be like displacing someone in a job, maybe.
Oh, yeah, that could be, and maybe that did happen. Possessions that they acquired with effort were destroyed. In a sense, this happened. There was like a bad earthquake in California in the 90s, and I think this would have been during this period, broadly speaking, and they had they were compensated money, but their house was like egregiously damaged and stuff. And then their divorce, they lost they lost their house and they're divorced. And so, I mean, it's accurate. All this stuff is accurate, but you have to always blend it.
Have you gotten sick? Have you gotten diseased or sick?
Not
really, right?
In this Saturn period,
you have a strong Saturn, so
I haven't really gotten like horribly sick, but I've had a lot of bodily pains.
You were born during the night, so
no, I was born during the day.
During the day?
Yeah.
But you're you were born during the day. Yeah. So Saturn is not that bad in your chart. Okay.
No, but it's below the horizon, which kind of counteracts the.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying. Well, that's a secondary. I
don't know, man. I've been thinking that stuff's kind of like more important than we might have thought originally. So if it's on the opposite horizon of the sun for a day planet, it can diminish its power.
Yeah, it diminishes, but it won't destroy it. It won't
but
as out of sect of light. Yeah.
Well, maybe not. But my Saturn stuff has been pretty. It's been hard. Yeah, it's been hard sometimes, man. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lay my guts out here on all of YouTube, but like I have struggled. I'm no superhuman, like I have struggled with a lot of Saturnian issues during this Saturn Dasha period that are.
And you haven't. You're going right now through your Saturn return too, right?
Yeah, by sign. Yeah.
Yeah. How's that going?
Well, I mean, are
these things expressing themselves?
Yeah, Saturn has mostly for me, and you can
in the fifth.
Yeah, you can see this by some like subtle techniques like Navamsha stuff, but Saturn for me has mostly been an internal struggle. It has not
the mind. Yeah.
Yeah, it has not been as much of an external struggle because I have Saturn in good dignity in the Brashi chart and in the D12 chart, but in the D9 it's not in such a great place, so it's been a more like mentally it's been very stressful and challenging, but it's also been incredible. I mean, there have been some incredible things I've experienced, so I'm grateful for it all, but I also acknowledge that this stuff is real. Distress by exhaustion, fatigue, like I mean, geez, right now I'm like overworking myself because I'm in a play as we're making this video. And so I'm like insanely tired like all the time because I'm just doing so much stuff, So,
whenever we see descriptions of Saturn, we have to think of the Aretha Franklin song "Respect" because yeah, because I mean, we have to respect Saturn.
Yeah,
and he always never gets respect. I mean, these
Saturn's like my favorite graha.
And these are the lessons that make you a man and make you a woman. I mean, these are the lessons that really make you what you are supposed to be. So, yeah, we're just digressing. So let's continue.
Yeah. So in conclusion, everybody should watch Mulan because there's that song "Be a Man" in it, and it's a woman who's outmanning all the men. Okay.
Yeah, build the wall. Okay, continue.
Alrighty.
And I'm Hispanic, okay? So yeah. Construyan el muro. Okay, we're continuing.
Okay. Remember, Saturn rules archery according to Gemini.
It's going to be pretty outdated in a couple of years when people.
Yeah, it is. But Saturn rules archery too. Remember, according to Gemini, Saturn rules archery, which is a very highly disciplined, skilled set. Oh,
really? But Sagittarius is also archery.
It is, but for Gemini, Saturn in the Swamsha makes the person an archer. And what's so interesting about that is, I mean, Saturn is my Atmakarika, and I have always had a fascination with archery. I've never really done it, unfortunately, but it is something that I would have a lot of fun doing. I was a big fan of that show, Arrow.
I mean, your parents' house, you could do it.
No, I could do it here where I moved too. There's a lot of land that I'm on, but
just be careful with the cops, okay?
Oh yeah, sure. But I was a big fan of that show, Arrow, as well.
I read the comics.
It got stupid. The show got stupid, and I stopped watching. But man, I just loved that. Like, okay. Anyway, all right. Chapter 41. What the heck was this about? I don't even remember.
Dashas and their dynamics, and it's basically like how the Antardasha expresses itself. And it's a kind of weird chapter. Specifically, I didn't understand shlokas 3 and 4.
Okay.
But if you want, we can read it. Like, Number 1 says those planets which are in Upaya places, which would be obviously 3,
Upachaya, yeah.
6, 10, and 11.
Yeah.
From the ascendant or are in their own base triplicities, friends, houses, or signs of flotation. If they're
right, okay. They give good results. Like for some, it's interesting. Like the Upachaya places, even though 2 of them are highly malefic, they seem to be heralded as like really good.
Because they get well over time.
Right, yeah, so that's...
Because you have the opportunity to learn, to fall, to learn.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. Yeah, I don't know. I've always found that fascinating. It seems to work well in practice, too.
If you really think about it, there's no really, like, if you see the bad houses, the 12, the 8th, and the 6, they're really not that bad because as secondary factors, they always get mitigated. In a way, you know, sure. The 6 by being an Upachaya, the 8th by being an impressionable house lord, and the 12th being an impressionable house lord also, and also by being spiritual, the 12 and the 8th being more esoteric. You know, it's just a way of finding, you know, the right perspective to understand these. But you know, for the common layman, these are difficult houses.
Sure.
They're dush-sthana, you know, places of grief. That's what it means.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, the times belonging to each of the planets within the dashas are called antardashas, or bhuktis, or secondary periods in this case. Dividing the influence of the lord of the dasha, they make a series depending on their position.
Right.
Okay, this is where I don't understand.
Okay.
A planet in the same place as the lord of the dasha, so I guess a planet in the same house, right?
Yeah.
Possesses a half of its period. One in the 4th place, a 4th. One in the 5th, a 3rd. One in the 9th, a 6th. And a planet in the 8th place from that occupied on its course by the planet, which is the lord of the dasha, a 7th. The subperiods of the antardashas, which would be the pratyantardashas, right, are to be known by the order of the planet's strength and dashas bias. I didn't understand those.
Yeah, so it's possibly this idea that, like, you know, if we have like I don't know, like Jupiter, moon, right? And we're in Jupiter, then the moon is going to come next, and it's going to give half of its period. And we don't know what the period is because he doesn't tell us, but maybe there must be something fixed that he's referring to that he just didn't mention.
Jupiter comes after Rahu, so in Binchadari.
After the moon? Oh, or after... No, but this is not based on...
Yeah, we don't know. Exactly.
Well, I don't think it is because he's telling us to like take the planets in orders based more on the chart.
He's probably talking about special dashas that are constructed from the specific particular planetary positions you have.
This is something you see in Hellenistic systems a lot, like quarters of the moon. You start with the prenatal lunation, and then the first planet after it is the first period. The second planet is the second period, and so on. And it's a totally custom thing based upon the way the person's planets fall. So it's a very interesting system. I haven't experimented with it a lot, but I think it does work pretty well, although it's a little artificial with the years. But in any case, so, you know, if the next planet that comes along is in the 4th house, I don't know why he skips 2nd and 3rd. That doesn't help us. But if it's in the 4th house, it's like it's going to be, what is it, a 4th? Yeah. And then in the 5th, it's going to be for some reason a 3rd. Maybe it's because it's a trine or something. And then in the 9th, in the 9th, 1/6. So the idea being like somehow the sub periods of these planets in some other planets, Dasha, we get their years, their sub period years from this method. But it's not very clear because we don't have any examples and we don't have the number of years ascribed to each planet, you know. So it'd be very interesting to test some of these things out with systems that we know, like Vimshotri Dasha, or like the Hellenistic system where they give years for each planet, like the sun is 19, the moon is 25, and so on. It'd be interesting to test this out with stuff like that because we just don't, otherwise, like, we can't really use it. So
this is probably a particular Dasha system that we're unaware of.
Yeah. Okay, then he bitches and moans about malefics being shit.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah, but you know, whatever. If it's in if it's in good condition, it does good things. Although later on he says
for
something
you.
about, well, later on he says
Probably
something
not
about,
for other people, but yeah, for you, yeah.
no, but later on he says something about like if malefics are strong. He says strong, not necessarily by sign, but maybe he just means like in an angle or something, or directional strength. Then it's more malefic. That it can produce more malefic things. There's a certain amount of truth to that. Like a fallen Saturn or fallen Mars in the 10th house is much more malefic, in my opinion, than a fallen Saturn or Mars in like the 12th or the 6th house.
Yeah, I got that in Navamsha. Yeah.
Well, okay, whatever. Navamsha, you know. Yeah. I give more importance to the nativity. I give the utmost importance to the nativity. So that's why I'm kind of being dismissive. But I don't know. Did we want to? What else was here that?
He just talks about Dashas, and I mean, we could go on. I really didn't write anything about it. He just talks about, the idea that if the Dasha Lord is an enemy of the Dasha Lord, then.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Which is a rule you have. But the thing is that we don't know if he's talking about the scheme he gave earlier or the natural Jyotish scheme.
Well, I personally think that for the most part, the Parashara scheme or whoever gives that scheme originally, I think that that's really the best one. I think it works really well. I think the Yavanajataka one is a little unwieldy, a little awkward.
I think it's a typo. I don't because if we remember that we discussed in the first video, those are very random. I mean, some planets just have one friend and everybody else.
Yeah, that's the problem with it. But there's another friendship scheme given by Al-Kabisi, who's a Persian astrologer. And again, it's completely different. I haven't experimented with much because I really like the Parashara scheme for a lot of things. But I think what Yavanajataka, it's nice that it gives this alternate friendship scheme, because what it's pointing out is that, like, in this system, Jupiter and Venus are friends, right? And the idea there is that when Jupiter and Venus come together, it's like it's a lot of abundance of a lot.
By the way, they're in conjunction right now, yeah.
Yeah, so it can bring a lot of money and it can bring a lot of pleasure, but it can bring overindulgence, of course. But I think the point is that with planetary friends and enemies, we probably shouldn't be too hard and fast with that, because just speaking again outside of this tradition, Guido Bonatti covers several different versions of friendships in his treatise.
Who is a medieval Italian astrologer?
Middle Ages, very good astrologer. His text is amazing. And anyway, he says, like, okay, well, there's this scheme, but he's sort of implying, it's almost like he's saying, like, I prefer to just think logically, like planets become friends or enemies more based upon like how they're combining and what they're bringing to the table. So like Jupiter and Venus are friends when it comes to producing like wealth and abundance, right? Sun and Mars are friendly when it comes to producing a lot of fiery stuff. Like if you're going to be a smith and do forging, let's say, or a soldier maybe, and so on and so forth. So it's not as like cut and dry, like it's not as like, oh, they're always this or they're always this. It's more like just thinking logically. And so while Parashara's scheme is very, very good and very reliable, even there we have to be careful, because I've seen some people say like, oh, well Mars is aspecting Jupiter by a 7th first aspect, but that's good because Mars and Jupiter are friends. And it's like, well, but actually that can also be very, very violent and destructive. So we have to
a pope who's going to order a crusade.
Absolutely, or that can be a person who's a thief. If Mars is stronger than Jupiter,
a very wise thief, yeah.
A person who destroys other men's, livelihood and is,
Or maybe he could be a professor of military sciences. I mean, but Parashara. The thing is that comes with
I'm a little more negative with it.
Yeah, I mean, he could be like a terrorist.
Yeah. But I think
Al-Qaeda or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and both our examples are equally good. I guess my point is that you have to know when friend and enemy stuff is like really appropriate.
That's where the caliber of the astrologer comes in, because I have a rule, and that's like Murphy's rule. If
Murphy's
anything
law,
can,
yeah.
Exactly, Murphy's law. That if anything can go wrong, then something will go wrong. In
Okay.
astrology, there's got to be like a certain Murphy's law.
Yeah.
That if factors apply, they will always apply. Like,
yeah.
And that comes to the idea of cancellations also. You know,
Yeah,
the idea that oh, it's canceled, the debility. No, it's canceled, but you're gonna get the debility also.
Yeah, so like Mars, for example, Mars in Cancer squaring Jupiter in Libra, you know, from the Avashtas that Parashara gives, we might say, oh, but that's like a good Avashta that's helping Jupiter. But just logically speaking, how can that really be if Mars is fallen?
If Mars is overcoming Jupiter, it's going to be hard.
Jupiter's not in a good sign for Jupiter, and so on. How can
that's where the law comes in. I mean, that's if Parashara says it's a good combination and the square aspect obviously is hard, then it's going to be somebody who's wise, who's going to think that, you know, life can be approached in a very philosophical way, but then something is going to happen to him where he's going to, like a Martian thing, an accident, robbery, something like that, that is going to uplift his wisdom, and he's going to become more wise, more street savvy, and he's going to become aware that, pacifism doesn't always work. You got to be, you know, if parabellum, si vis pacem parabellum, which is a Latin term, which means if you want peace, you got to prepare to war. And you know, I've always seen the combination of Jupiter and Mars as a positive one, but it's a hard one. You know,
well, it depends. It's been very good for my brother who has Jupiter and Mars in trine with Jupiter.
I have Mars and Jupiter in trine.
Okay, but like, I mean, in Hellenistic astrology, especially for squares, the planet in the earlier sign kind of calls the shots.
Yeah, overcoming, right?
Yes, so Mars overcoming Jupiter, if you read about it, is very malefic, but Jupiter overcoming Mars is much more like what you were talking about.
Yeah. The thing is that when Mars, but that's what I'm telling you. If Mars overcomes Jupiter, then he's going to have an accident. He's going to have something bad happen to him because of his Jupiterian ideals, right?
Well, maybe. I don't know.
That crisis, that situation, if he overcomes it, right? If he survives it, he's going to become more wiser. You know,
sure. Hopefully, but it depends on, obviously it depends on so many factors, as we both know. But I guess my point is that, like, you know, you wouldn't want to jump to conclusions, right? Like, you know,
you have to do the confluence.
Like the Lajatati Avashtas, where Mars can like help Jupiter because they're friends, right? But if Mars is fallen, it's also, you know, what they would say asleep. I forget the Sanskrit, but sleeping. So it's
it is sushuti.
Sushuti, yeah. So it's not really going to be able to help Jupiter, and it's actually arguably going to be, like you were saying, you know, kind of difficult, like an accident or something. And, you know, I mean, we're just getting like way into this hypothetical thing. But I think our point was that in Yavanajataka, which is a very extremist sort of text, like presents things in very heavy extremes.
Like most classics do.
Like most classics, but this one is one of the most extreme to me. You got to remember that these kinds of rules that we're talking about, and you got to take into account the subtleties, right? Friendship doesn't override basic rules of dignity and good placement and things like that. So
that's the thing. I mean, you have to do the confluence, and you have to realize that if you do a practice and you combine different things don't cancel each other out. They exist. Even if people say they cancel themselves out, especially with Nichavanga, which is the principle. People are going to, Nichavanga, you're going to have a fall, inevitably, because the planet is debilitated. But the cancellation of debilitation will, you know, help you overcome that. And then you have to see other factors. But, you know, I think it's like Murphy's Law, and I've said this before, you know, if an astrological factor says something, then that thing is going to happen. Even though there are other that contradict it, it doesn't matter. They're both going to express itself.
I feel so stupid right now because a friend of mine the other day was showing me Will Smith's chart,
Uh-huh.
He was like, what do you think makes that fallen Saturn in the 11th good? And I was like giving all these ideas, and I just realized that what's actually making it really good is that Sun is in Libra, and so they're actually exchanging exaltations.
Yeah.
And so,
and not only that,
but they're normally enemies, right? What? Sorry, go ahead.
He lost everything before the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh, did he? Okay, that makes sense. So it fits perfectly, right? He loses everything, but then because of that yoga of exaltation exchange, he gains everything back and more. So I gotta tell my friend that. I feel so like, come on, Lars, like basic shit. Come on.
And and one of my teachers taught me that, and I've seen that express itself. Nichavangas are not happy-go-lucky. It's like, oh, I had Nichavanga. Oh, it's gonna be great. No, you're gonna have a fall. The fall is gonna be there. How it's gonna be, it's another topic.
Yeah.
You have the fall, and then you rise up. Right?
Absolutely.
And then you learn mistakes. So, in the case of the Mars aspect square overcoming the Jupiter, you can say that. I mean, and we are digressing, Mr. Panaro, so let's continue.
Okay. All right. I thought this was interesting. The embodied soul.
Which is like us, exactly.
Being in the Dasha of the ascendant.
Which would be our ascendant lord.
Yeah, when the sub-period has a bad influence on the last day, loses power of action, the soul leaves the body. I just thought that was interesting. It's kind of a little obscure, but...
We're going to be talking about death now, so... Yeah.
Okay.
That was very black metal.
Yeah, I used to play a lot of death metal and stuff. So
yeah, nobody's perfect. It's okay.
All right, moving on. Whatever planet is Lord of the Eighth. So chapter 42. Actually, sorry. Before I get into this, chapter 42 is all about
death.
All about death, and then is it chapter 43 where he starts talking about the different worlds that the person...
It's after death. Yeah, 43 is after death. Yeah.
Okay, so again, we see the Drekina kind of popping up here obscurely. Yeah, it sort of pops up.
Video.
Yeah, it sort of pops up here and there, and God, now you're making me want to make like a video on Drekinas and just have it pop up in these YouTube videos whenever we...
You're gonna spend a lot of time editing. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so whenever a planet is Lord of the Eighth place, possesses the end of the years allotted to the native, or else the Lord of the Drekina of the eighth place. So this is implying cusps, maybe? I don't know.
I don't think so.
That planet, if it is strong in the nativity, causes the death of the natives by means of injuries like itself. Well, I just wanted to read that because of the Drekina thing. It's okay, is it a cusp? Maybe not. Is it like if a planet is in a Drekina in the eighth kind of thing? Like if a planet's in the eighth and you look at the Drekina it's in? Don't know. Could be if the Lord of a particular Drekina of the eighth house is stronger than the Lord of the eighth,
I'll be right back. Give me 1 minute.
Okay. So basically, we then get a simple explanation of the planets, right? Sun, death by fire; Moon, predictably death by water; Mars, swords, fire; flood is interesting. Flood is kind of a violent way to go.
I'm back.
Okay, I'm just talking about the planets and how they cause death a bit. Sun, fire, moon, water.
You just take the planetary signification and you're going to die from the planetary signification.
Jupiter means...
Your eighth lord is Mars, right?
Yeah.
So a burglar is gonna kill you, and my eighth lord is the moon, so I'm gonna drown. So there you go.
There we go. Yeah. Jupiter means of diseases in the belly because Jupiter is going to be something not really violent, right?
Yeah, gastric, yeah.
Mercury by means of fevers and by practicing crafts and studying. That is hilarious.
You're probably gonna overdose on Adderall because you're studying hard for your
maybe especially
law degree. Yeah.
Saturn and Rahu aspect. All right, Venus, faults involving women, drink, partying,
Yeah,
phlegmatic disease.
you're gonna lose your genitals. Yeah.
Yeah, your dick's gonna fall off if you're a man.
Exactly. I didn't want to say that, but you said that.
All right, and because of Saturn by means of a black bull. I loved this one.
That's
what
very
the
occult.
actual fuck. Okay,
Yeah,
or a quadruped.
That's death. That's like the Grim Reaper.
Yeah,
like on steroids. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. Like Saturn is something more ominous and more out of our control. Like Mars is that guy that like you owed money to and who just gets really pissed and like stabs you or whatever. Or
yeah,
Mars
that sketchy guy with the hood who has in their knees. Yeah.
Or stabs you with, what is it, like a screwdriver or something?
A Chick-fil-A? What? I'm sorry.
A guy who stabs you with a screwdriver.
Yeah. Also.
Something like that. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, but Saturn is something like much more like out of our control, right? Like Mars, again, live by the sword, die by the sword. Like that American sniper guy, he was shot in the back of the head by kind of a deranged veteran who he was trying to like help. I don't know if you heard of that.
You mean the guy who was in a Texas university that got up to a tower and started shooting people?
No. The guy they made a movie about, who was a sniper who killed like 150, 200 people in like Iraq, and then he was shot in the back of the head at a shooting range by a deranged veteran because he was trying to help veterans with like PTSD.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
He was shot in the back of the head by a deranged veteran who just had some extreme affliction. And so, that's like a very Mars thing, right? But Saturn would be like, yeah, this black bull. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like you're walking along and then all of a sudden this bull comes out, and it could be anything, right? It could be like a boulder too. And you're dead. And it's not random. Everything in life is, of course, related to our thoughts and actions and deeds and stuff and our greater karmas. But the point being that Saturn is probably not the type of death you will necessarily see coming,
yeah.
Even if other people see it,
which relates to the idea of the bull, which the bull is always calm, but when it snaps, and it's black, which is Saturn. So
yeah,
it's something like, I don't know, a heart attack, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the bull, the constellation of the bull has the most malefic star in it, Algol, which is like getting your head chopped off kind of a thing. So there's kind of some
that's what it means in Arab,
stuff.
Actually. Al Ghul, the head.
Ras Al Ghul, yeah, the demon's head.
No. Well, yeah, exactly the star. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's the villain in the DC
Batman.
Universe too. Yeah.
Yeah. A very cool bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, definitely. Okay, anyway, so got carried away with that a little bit. I don't know, like I don't think there was too much in this chapter. I really felt like it gets more in detail, right? Like now we get sun in 8th place instead of just fire. It gives all these things, right?
Yeah, and it's just very easily understood if you know the significations of the planets. It's just, and it makes sense. It's coherent with other things you've heard about the 8th and death and all that. And even with Hellenistic principles, right? Because
absolutely.
In Jyotish, sometimes the 12 is also considered death. But in Hellenistic, it's the 8th, and
it's more the 8th, yeah. 8th and 4th, actually. 4th have to do with burials and the end of life.
Of course, because it's the opposite point.
But the 12th house can definitely kill for sure, because it's so malefic in Hellenistic, both astrologies, but especially Hellenistic. It's really malefic in Hellenistic.
I just want to say that and this is something I wrote down, that even though he's talking about death, there are no mentions of maracas here.
No, that's a later.
No mention of the 2nd.
Yeah, that is a later idea, and I don't doubt that works, but I've never resonated with it, and so I just don't use it. The 2nd house was called the Gate of Hades by the Hellenistics, and so maybe that has something to do with it.
Because it's the beginning of going down under Earth, yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense to me either, because it's the sign that's going to rise after the first sign.
Yeah, but it's the
astronomically.
I guess. At the same time, you're going in the reverse way also, which kind of...
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it's also... the Gates of Hades is the name given to the 2nd in terms of Hellenistic astrology. But I don't know, man. I mean, the rationale behind the 2nd and the 7th is that what's going to kill you? Well, other people will kill you, the seventh, right?
Yeah.
And things that go through your mouth, dietary things,
Yeah.
elements that are in the outside that you absorb, microbes, viruses.
Yeah, it may be very good. It may work very well for predicting concretely death, but it doesn't work for me because I take the fact that the eighth house symbolizes both literal death, but it also symbolizes like crises, like psychological death too.
The thing is that in Jyotish, the eighth and the third, since they're the second from the seventh and the second, right? They represent the houses of longevity. So in Jyotish, the eighth relates to death in the sense that it is the house of longevity. And once your longevity is gone, that's where the second and the seventh kick in, right? And
so that's what it is. It's because they're the 12th from the eighth and third.
Exactly. And even that, I remember K and Rao's explanation, a planet in the 12 can give death. Saturn can give death. I mean,
yeah, of course.
It's very relative. But, we must remember that Maraca houses are instrumental in figuring out the functional beneficence or maleficence of the planet in the Parashara scheme. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, death astrology is something that is very taboo, and I understand that, and it's something that most astrologers don't want to get into or don't want to discuss. And usually, people, when they discuss these things, they kind of mention it, but they really don't talk about it specifically.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because of this, and sometimes it's because they really don't know because nobody has taught them. But, these are tricky subjects.
They're not, and my own bias against the second, seventh thing is I've experimented with like the medieval Persian methods for predicting death, and that seems to work fairly well. And also like the eighth.
You also told me about Ptolemy's, one of Ptolemy's techniques for death, right?
Oh yeah, that's kind of what a lot of the medieval stuff is based off of. It's very similar to that. So it's not something
I don't know that technique. Does it have to do with the eighth?
It has more to do with finding a planet that gives you a rough number of years and then using primary directions to pinpoint it. And so, yeah, the eighth can be involved, but it's much more about like, okay, there's all these potential planets that can kill and finding the ones that are most likely to kill at the appropriate time. That has to do with the years and has to do with the primary direction. So like it doesn't, the eighth lord might not even be important in that estimation. The eighth stuff is more important for time lord stuff. Like a friend of mine died when they went into Sun Mars period, and both of those planets are in the eighth. Now, granted, Mars is the seventh lord and the second lord. So, you have some overlap there, but I was using Ferdaria, which is a Persian system, and I just felt like, oh yeah, this is just spot on. Jesus, they have this like terminal cancer, and these two planets in the eighth are getting activated. So just based on basic medieval principles, there it is. So, continuing, I just thought it was interesting too, like this idea, if the eighth place, oh yeah, and this emphasizes the eighth house, these death techniques, right? It doesn't emphasize the second and seventh. So
that's
again,
what I meant.
Yeah, sorry. So again, more Hellenistic. But if the eighth place is a forest sign and aspected by the sun, death occurs in the wilderness. So
which I think are the fire signs.
Are they? I can't remember. Yeah. He gives them at the beginning of the text, and I was too lazy to look at.
They're either the fire signs or the earth signs. One of those.
Okay.
The sun signs are the air signs, without a doubt.
Okay.
And the holy signs are the water signs.
Okay, yeah. So this kind of blew my mind just because it made me realize like how much I kind of neglect the signs sometimes and like what they can add. And so I was just like, wow, this is really cool. And it'd be great to think about this for other areas of life, not just death. Like what does it say to have a forest sign in the seventh house for like your partner?
I use those every time, by the way.
Oh, cool. Good for you. I sort of, I neglect those a lot, but yeah, like what would a forest sign in the seventh say for the partner? What would a city sign say, like, and so on? It might just mean you meet your partner in kind of an area like that, It could be that simple.
That's how you start. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool. Thought that was a really cool little reminder there. Okay, causes death by madness of the people, moon 8th aspected by Saturn. Just some interesting stuff like that. This is a really cool chapter.
He doesn't mention about empty 8th houses. That's something I noticed.
Yeah, that's a good point. He doesn't. And what do we do in that case? Maybe we take the planets aspecting the 8th, or maybe we focus on the 8th lord and the planets aspect in the 8th lord. But this is a good reminder too that planets in a house are in some ways more important for matters of that house than the lord. It's a careful balance. And but a lot of ancient astrology, you will see this, that a planet in a house is determined toward the affairs of that house. And the great medieval astrologer, scholar Robert Zoller said that in his opinion, a planet in a house was like 55%, whereas the Lord was like 45%. However, at the same time, he also said that the ultimate success or failure or whatever of the house rested with the Lord or the Almuten, which is another thing entirely.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point being that there's like a fine balance there. So I don't think I have. Let me just check and see if I underlined anything here. No, I didn't.
It's just death astrology things that are Saturnian.
Oh, wait a second. Sorry, going back real quick. There is this obscure passage here that I underlined about number 5. The various diseases are determined by means of the sign and planet in the 8th place and arise from their qualities. The last period of time in the Dasha is 2 months long and is determined by the Dwadasamsha and Navamsha in the 7th place. So he is mentioning the 7th place, but specifically for timing, not for actual like quality of death.
And once again, he doesn't. We don't know what dashas he's referring to. So.
Nah.
Lost to history.
Yeah, and I would imagine you take the planet that's aspect, like you take the lord that's stronger of these two. If the Dwad lord is stronger and aspecting, you take that. If the Navamsha lord is stronger and that, but I don't know. Okay, last but not least for this video, chapter 43, which has to do with what
happens after you
Loka.
Very interesting chapter.
The soul will go to. And we actually find this technique reproduced in Parashara. We also find it another technique that he adds for determining where the person came from before they were born, which deals with the 12th house. And Parashara also repeats this theme of the decans again.
And believe it or not, we see this also in the Gita, the idea of where you're going after death.
Oh, yeah, okay.
In terms of, especially with the gunas. Yeah.
Now,
I think it's chapter 17, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, in the Bhagavad Gita, of course.
In the Bhagavad Gita. Now, what was interesting about this is reading this version of the technique, I was surprised to see that Parashara's version is very simple in comparison. This one is a lot more complex. And I haven't tested it at all. I tested the Parashara one. It seemed to make sense psychologically. I wasn't able to determine if people actually went to this loka or came from this loka, but psychologically it was like, because Parashara gives the four levels basically, like God, human, demon, and I don't remember something else, but animal.
It's those 3. I believe there's...
No, it's 4. It's 4.
The 4. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Animal might be one. I forget.
Raksasha, Deva. I'm sorry. It's
Manusha and animal maybe. But anyway, I found that psychologically it made a lot of sense to think about, like, okay, metaphorically speaking, the person is like let's say they're coming from a human realm and going to a human realm, which would be really boiler or like, bread and butter kind of, it's easy to interpret. The idea is that this is a person that maybe is very concerned with like human affairs, whereas if they were going from like the Deva realm to like the Rakshasa realm, maybe they are coming from a place of exaltation of some kind and loftiness, but they are getting involved in darker areas of life. And this could be a good thing for somebody who's like a social worker or like a psychologist or a mental health ward person. It doesn't have to be something really negative, like, oh, you're de-evolving. No, that's not what it's about. But I don't know. Did you want to say anything about this?
I think 1115 is something I kind of didn't understand. I think he's talking about transits during death.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, let's get to that after we
go for it.
Just talk a little bit about this. So we see that he's really fixed rules about this technique when the soul is carried away to death.
And he says that you can leave horizontally, vertically, or downward, something like that.
Yes.
I found that very funny.
So there are 3 ways, here it is, that the world of men at the time of death: horizontally, up or down. When a man dies, his qualities establish paths for him, which have various sorts of caste forms and characteristics. And then he goes into this whole thing: if at the time of death all the benefic planets are in their own vargas and the signs of exaltation and in angles, or if the Lord of the 8th place is a benefic and is in this yoga, it provides the way to the abode of the sun, Surya Loka. And then he gives this thing about the 6th, 7th, or 8th places, which Parashara seems to echo as well. But it's very eclectic technique. I wish I could say more on this, but it just gets pretty weird. And it's like, it's basically like if the benefics are dominating, it's like the highest sphere. If like the, malefics are dominating, it's like the lowest sphere.
Yeah.
Their rebirth in a particular caste depends on a planet, which is in the 7th or 8th place, and then once again, if the lords of the 6th, 7th, and 8th place are in the signs of dejection and blah, 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 it's just really arcane kind of stuff. And then there's a part where he says something about like doing this any other way is unimaginable. Like you have to do it. I don't remember where it is, but I laughed when I saw it because I was like, geez, he's like really, really serious about this. Like what is the deal with this?
It's the idea that you can discern where the person is going after the moment of passing away through the planetary positions. But he does not mention the words of transits, and that's something that really I find weird. That I think.
Okay, so this is the part where you thought he was talking about transits?
Yeah.
And I did too, actually.
There is a certain unchanging rule produced by the yogas of planets and signs in the horoscope at the birth of men. They call it his faith. There is a similar rule in the yearly horoscope of men. He's talking about Barsafala there.
Solar return. Varsaval,
this rule is set by experts to be 2 sorts: the fixed and the pretentious. Anything which is established by the birth of horoscope follows along in order over courses of time and is called fixed. I'm sorry. Let me just.
Oh, no problem.
It's that they're constructing. This rule is set by the experts to be the 2 sorts of fixed. I'm sorry. Anything which is established by the birth. I'm sorry. I already read that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But as the planets pass through the signs, there we go. Gochara. Which are set by good men to have been the positions of the 7 planets at the native's birth. They exercise an influence which is called. I don't understand.
I don't know why it's so complex. All he's saying that the positions of the planets at the native's birth. He's just talking about the freaking birth chart, and then he's talking about planets transiting.
Talking about death right now. I mean, it's just
So this is portentous, meaning that like it is likely it might happen, kind of thing. Is the vibe I'm getting? Maybe that's not a great translation of the Sanskrit. I don't know.
But yeah, I think he's just saying where the soul goes after the moment of passing away. And, it's a logical thing. The better the positions, the better the outcome, the worse the positions.
I just realized here we have arguably a reference to Ashtaka Varga.
Yes, there is Ashtaka
Varga. Method having the nature of 8 and possessing many characteristics and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's got to be Ashtaka Varga.
And I think he mentions in the next page, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, let's look. Ooh, okay. Ashtavarga, yeah, that's probably the same thing, although it's like an abbreviated version of it.
Yeah, Ashta is Asht. It's like 8. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well I'm sorry I can't remember where he says doing this any other way is unimaginable, but
And you can predict, I mean, you can't necessarily predict death through Ashtagavarga, but you could, in a way, predict negative things through Ashtagavarga, specifically when a planet, depending on what it rules in your chart, goes into a sign where it has 0 or 1.
Sure.
Specifically Saturn, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, you're going to have a bad time, yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you, Ashtagavarga is very powerful.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
And everybody uses them in different ways, but for me, Ashtagavarga is very, very underrated.
I think I would, if I was using Ashtagavarga, I would actually want to use it as a complete system unto itself.
You could use it, but
yeah.
I've experimented with Ashtagavarga, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, and there are several techniques. For example, between 1 and 7, if the 1 has more numbers in it, a higher Vinashtakavarga, if I'm not mistaken. If it has a higher number than the 7th, then you're gonna be possessive in the relationship. And if the 7th has more numbers than the 1st, then your partner is gonna be the possessive one, right?
Oh, okay.
And if you have like very little, like less than 23 or 20, you're gonna be very you're gonna be very people are gonna manipulate you, especially in romantic relationships. Which makes sense. You know, it's a game of numbers actually.
Yeah.
And actually, it also relates to ages. For example, the number of the ascendant, whatever the number is, that age, that solar revolution is going to be very important for your development, and so on and so forth. And you can do that with the age of the 10th. You can do that with the age of the 12th in terms of losing money, spending money.
Wow.
You can do that with the age of the 5th in terms of having children. So it's a secondary factor that I use.
Cool.
And it doesn't change a lot between sidereal and tropical charts.
Oh, okay.
Which is another important thing.
That's good to know. Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. I kind of, it inspires me to want to come up with a methodology for assessing house strength that would be a little easier to do on the fly.
Well, the thing is that you don't use Ashtagavarga to measure the house strength. You measure it to see the strength of the planet in transit through that house or sign.
No, man, you can use it to just measure the house strength and just
I guess so.
People do, and
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, it works. It's really bizarre how.
And Parashara has some very good techniques.
Yeah.
Ashtagavarga and transits that, you know, when we discuss this book, we can spend a while there because it's some very good techniques in terms of when the father's going to die, measured through nakshatras mostly.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting stuff. I've never played with it a lot, but I'm blown away.
That's coming to your channel after we finish Yavanajataka, and we're already past the midpoint, so it's down here from here, young man.
It's downhill. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining me again, man. And you know, for our viewers here, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and visit Fernando's page and both our websites and all that stuff. And you know, to just give us like the most wonderful reviews and shower us with praise and just, you know, promote us far and wide across the many lands and, you know, just give up your life to come follow us. No, just kidding.
We're not going to offer any courses or anything. So don't worry about falling into a scheme. Are you planning on giving courses? No, I don't think so.
Well, I'm starting a pyramid scheme based on astrology. That's going to be door to door, but in virtual reality.
I'm sorry. It just cut itself when you said that. You said
I said I was going to start a pyramid scheme based on selling astrology that's going to be door to door, but in Mark Zuckerberg's virtual reality.
Man, you're gonna become rich.
And only in places that have been hit by hurricanes, like Puerto Rico. So, like, that'll be the only place you go by VR to try to sell.
Yeah, I saw that video. Yeah, with the
so ridiculous. God. All right, man. Well,
you're gonna become the Aries king.
Oh no! Please no.
Because you're Aries. Yeah.
Right. Oh, geez. Okay. Anyway, where was I? Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. Yeah. Just sometimes you gotta, yeah. It's been a good video. I think
we're the oddballs of astrology, aren't we?
Oh yeah, I could be way crazier actually, and I plan to be in future videos.
Yeah. We are crazy. That's why we do what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, have a good day. We're gonna synchronized swimming out of the thing. So 1, 2, 3. Woo!